in the cold void beyond Triscar Prime, where the stars whispered secrets only machines could hear. An unknown object drifted into sensor range, moving with a steady, unnatural precision that caught the attention of the orbital patrol. It was not listed in any registry, did not respond to hails, hey, and had no transponder codes or diplomatic markers, just a long, dark hull shaped like a spear, bristling with angular plating that absorbed light like a black hole. The Car-3 Armada, one of the largest military forces in the galaxy, dispatched a scout vessel to intercept, expecting to find a rogue asteroid or malfunctioning cargo hauler, but what they found shook them to their core. The vessilator, labeled as Unknown Warship Alpha in the fleet, records emitted no drive plume, used no warp trail, and responded to no scanning pulses. Yet its surface was lined with weapon mounts that resembled magnetic coil guns, projectile-based, and ancient by modern standards, but glowing faintly with residual energy far beyond any known power curve. When the scout attempted to move closer, it was struck by a pulse of light silent. Spiaz disappeared from all sensors without a sound, not even debris left behind. High Admiral Vernax ordered the full fleet to combat stations and recalled the regional command ships to form a perimeter around Triscar Prime. Over 1,200 ships, representing 6 starfaring species, formed a battle array and waited as the unknown ship, now moving under its own strange power, approached this system's edge like a predator circling prey. Scientists on the command decks argued that it had no living crew, that it moved like a machine, and that its power signature, though old-fashioned, matched none known in the last 1,000 years. But deep in the galactic archives, someone found a chilling match in forgotten human records, an old Earth defense design known as a Vanguard-class planetfall dreadnought, a model believed to have never left its own star system before humanity's presumed extinction over 3 centuries ago. Most dismissed it as impossible. Humans had died out in the solar collapse, their worlds reduced to myths, but archivist Vela, a xenohistorian with little political power but great curiosity, warned the council that if this ship was indeed human-made, then it was not a relic, but a sentinel. The council ignored her. The fleet moved to intercept. The Car-3 flagship, Fury of Suns, initiated contact protocols, firing warning shots across the vessel's path. The unknown ship didn't change course. Admiral Vernax gave the order to engage fully. What followed wasn't a battle, it was execution. Within the first 60 seconds, the outer perimeter of ships vanished under pinpoint rail slugs that moved faster than light sensors could track, striking with surgical precision at reactors, bridges, and weapon bays. Tire cruisers were split in two by invisible forces. The second line of defense opened fire with plasma torpedoes and ion curtains, but nothing touched the ship, was either deflected, neutralized, or simply avoided with sharp, possible maneuvers. No communications came from the enemy. No signal, no voice, no sound, just silence. At minute 3, the command ships attempted to retreat, but the ship pulsed once with a low-frequency EMP that dropped every synthetic intelligence and guidance system across the entire formation, rendering most vessels dead in the water. Escape pods were launched, but they too were neutralized, vanishing into bursts of static before clearing the combat zone. By the 4th minute, nothing moved except drifting wreckage and the lone ship, now gliding through the debris field like a ghost, passing through a graveyard. From orbit, civilians watched in horror as the might of their great fleet turned to ash without a single dent on the enemy hull. No one knew how to react. Some believed it was an act of war. Others whispered it was judgment from beyond. The council fell into chaos, issuing conflicting orders and emergency declarations. But Vela remained still, staring at a low-resolution scan of the enemy ships. Serial code partially corroded, but legible, stamped in blocky English letters. TSV. Spectre. She spoke softly, almost to herself. Terran Stellar Vanguard. Those words had not been spoken in centuries. Somewhere in deep space, humanity had survived, and if this ship was any sign, they had not forgotten what the galaxy had done to them. The Spectre made no further moves, simply parking itself in the outer orbit of Triskar Prime, not advancing, not retreating. It was waiting, but for what? No one knew. Surveillance drones kept a wide berth, too frightened to approach. While the council scrambled to understand what had just happened, the ship, designed with obsolete materials and long-lost tactics, had just annihilated the greatest military force in modern history in under 4 minutes. There was no logical explanation. Engineers studied the aftereffects and found no radiation trails, no digital signatures, no traces of known energy weapons. Just puncture holes, disabled systems, and silent wreckage. The Spectre seemed to exist. Outside the rules, everyone else played by, had no diplomatic function, no arrogance, no declaration of dominance, just a singular presence. It's like a sleeping titan that would not be moved. The system fell quiet as every nearby colony went dark, fearing the unknown. Trade routes were rerouted. Travel bans were issued. No one wanted to be near the Spectre. The galaxy, once confident in its superiority, now trembled at the idea that somewhere humanity had not only endured, but returned, and they were watching, quietly, patiently, and with purpose. The battlefield above Triskar Prime had gone cold, tiered with the drifting remains of once great ships, now reduced to silent wreckage. Their twisted metal husks slowly spinning in the vacuum, lifeless and broken, as the Spectre stood still in orbit, like a shadow cast by forgotten gods, unmoving, untouched, and unreadable. News of the annihilation spread faster than any fleet ever could, racing across star systems and colonies, carried by frightened captains, panicked traders, and scrambled emergency broadcasts, all repeating the same message: unknown human. Warship had arrived, and the Galactic fleet had lasted less than 4 minutes. In the days that followed, fear gripped every council, colony, and homeworld as leaders argued over what to do next, while others called for peace or surrender or silence. Entire sectors went dark, turning off their beacons. Hiding behind asteroid belts, sealing ports, and space lanes in the hope the Spectre would not see them, would not come for them next. But it didn't move. It stayed there in the black, a cold sentinel above the ruined fleet, neither threatening nor retreating, as if waiting for something. Across the central worlds, people whispered theories. Some said it was an ancient AI, awakened after 1,000 years of slumber. Others claimed it was vengeance from the past, a ghost of humanity rising from extinction to punish those who had once watched Earth burn. And a few, the boldest or perhaps the most afraid, said it wasn't alone. The council grew desperate for answers, holding emergency meetings in deep orbit, surrounded by what remained of their fleets, protected by layers of shields and armed satellites, though none of it brought any sense of safety. Scientists and historians were summoned, every archive opened, and it was there, buried beneath centuries of dust and forgotten data, that one name kept reappearing: Project Vanguard, secret initiative from old Earth, designed in the final years before the solar collapse. Most files were corrupted, but the pieces that remained spoke of sleeper ships, automated dreadnoughts, and self-guided missions meant to protect scattered remnants of humanity, if any had survived the fall. Among those digging through the old records was archivist Vela, a xenohistorian from the quiet moon of Lether IV, who had long believed that humanity's end had not been the end at all, but a disappearance. She had studied ancient Terran broadcasts, reconstructed lost language patterns, and believed there had once been more to Earth's silence than death. Now, staring at the Spectre's silhouette through a station viewport, she felt a growing certainty that her long-dismissed theories were true. The Spectre had not come to attack, had come because something had summoned it, while the council debated how to respond. Vela worked alone, running old communication algorithms, trying to match the patterns coming from the ship's faint signal pulses, which most military scanners had ignored as static noise. But she heard rhythm in it, like a code trying to speak. Late one night, as the station above Triskar drifted in orbit and the stars outside glimmered faintly, she cracked the first phrase. It was slow, repeating every 7 seconds. Status, awaiting confirmation. Directive, defend Terran assets. The words were chilling, not for their tone, but for their meaning. The ship wasn't attacking because it was waiting. It had orders, but those orders needed a trigger, a key, a signal. And someone, somewhere, had sent it. Vela reported her findings, but most council leaders ignored her, too shaken by the loss of their fleets to listen to what they saw as ghost stories. But not everyone was blind. Joint Intelligence Task Force, led by Admiral San Varlin of the Varkari Union, quietly reached out to her, asking for everything she had, believed her at least enough to act. With council approval blocked by fear and politics, Varlin authorized a covert mission aboard a stealth cruiser, one capable of approaching the Spectre without detection. Vela, against the advice of everyone she knew, joined the mission. As the cruiser moved silently through the debris field, slipping past the remnants of the destroyed fleet, every crew member held their breath, afraid that one flicker of engine light would trigger the Spectre's wrath. But the ship remained still. As they drew closer, the scans became clearer. No life signs, no atmosphere, no bridge or crew compartments. The vessel was completely unmanned, driven by a mind of its own, or perhaps one left behind. Its hull was scarred, but intact, bearing markings in a forgotten alphabet that only Vela could read. And then, as they reached 500 kilometers from the hull, the Spectre responded. A low vibration ran through the cruiser, not sound, but a pulse steady, deep, and measured. The lights flickered. Navigation systems stalled, but nothing struck them. Instead, their communication array lit up with a new signal, one not heard for centuries. It was a voice, calm, male, human, and recorded long ago. If you are receiving this, it said, then Earth has fallen. Commander Elias Ward, last officer of the Terran Vanguard. If any remnant lives, we are still here. This ship is yours. All others, beware. The voice ended, looping only once before falling silent again. On the bridge of the stealth cruiser, no one moved. Vela closed her eyes, feeling the weight of that voice. A message from the past, triggered not by an attack, but by recognition. Somewhere, someone had sent a confirmation to the Spectre. Someone, human. That meant there was a survivor, living Terran, hidden somewhere in the galaxy. The implications were too large to measure. The ship hadn't come to conquer it, had come to guard. And now it was waiting for the next step. As they pulled back from the Spectre, bringing the message to Admiral Varlin and the Hidden Council, panic gave way to something new, fear, mixed with awe. The Second Fleet was already forming in secret, this time composed of elite units from across the galaxy, equipped with the most advanced weapons ever built. They did not believe the ship was peaceful. They thought it was bait, and they planned to destroy it before it could bring more destruction. But Vela begged them to wait, to listen. She warned that the Spectre had not acted with rage, but precision, striking only military targets, only when provoked, had left cities, stations, and unarmed vessels untouched. But they didn't listen. They were afraid, and in fear, they chose war again. The fleet launched from 3 directions, coordinated and armed for high-intensity combat, the best the galaxy had to offer. They reached the Spectre in under an hour. Vela watched from her station, powerless to stop them. As the countdown to engagement began, she whispered to herself, wondering if the ship would defend again. If so, how long the galaxy could survive the wrath of a protector built by forgotten hands. The Second Fleet moved with silent purpose, its ships cloaked in advanced shielding and carrying weapons designed to break moons apart. Every captain told the same thing: do not wait, do not warn, and do not hesitate, because the enemy is ancient, is powerful, and dangerous, and, if allowed to move again, it may bring the end of all known systems. While most ships were prepared for full-scale combat, a small group within the command structure remained unsure, especially Admiral Sen Varlin, who still remembered the Spectre's restraint, its precise aim, and the message that played only when it was approached without aggression. He had the voice of Commander Elias Ward, saved on every system in his personal quarters, replaying it again and again, trying to understand what kind of man had left such a message and what war had made him build a ship like the Spectre. On Lether Station, far from the front, Vela continued her study of old Terran data, digging deeper into Project Vanguard and finding signs that Spectre was not a weapon of conquest, but part of something larger, something buried in codes, symbols, and old signal pathways no one used anymore. She found traces of what appeared to be a dead Terran network, still echoing faint transmissions in narrow bands no modern device could read. And when she rerouted her console to simulate old human communication tech, she found a strange, repeating message, confirming beacon, active awaiting next. It wasn't just the Spectre waiting, it was talking to something else, or perhaps many others, and that meant it might not be alone. With urgency rising in her voice, Vela sent her findings to Admiral Varlin just as the strike fleet reached the edge of the Spectre's position, now surrounded in a tight formation of 250 ships, all weapons armed, engines powered down to reduce detection. The command to engage had not yet been given, but tension was high, and many captains were growing impatient. Spectre still didn't move. It just floated in orbit, silent and still, no visible shield, no defense grid, no escorts, only the same haunting black frame marked with ancient Earth symbols and silent warning. Then something changed, not in the Spectre, but in the signal. Vela's console picked up a shift in the transmission. A new line repeated every 10 seconds. Signal detected, Vanguard chain, established response, pending. She froze, knowing this was not a random echo, but a reply. Somewhere, another ship had heard the Spectre, and it was answering. Before she could report it, a flash of blue light lit up space above Triscar Prime as the first ship in the strike fleet opened fire. A rail cannon slug, followed by a spread of plasma torpedoes, moving faster than anything Vela could warn against. But instead of responding with fire, the Spectre simply vanished. No explosion, no shield flare, no movement detected. 1 second, it was there, and the next, it was gone, leaving behind only empty space and a confused fleet. Panic set, and immediately, command ships began scanning. Wildly, orders flooded the channel. Captains argued and blamed sensor malfunctions, but nothing was found. Then, less than 2 seconds later, one of the outer fleet ships exploded, split cleanly in half by a single, invisible strike. Another followed, then a third, and within 20 seconds, 6 ships were gone, all struck by unseen force. The Spectre had moved, but not like before this time. It didn't just attack from one direction. It seemed to hit from everywhere at once, with precision and perfect timing, as if it had mapped every ship before disappearing. But it still didn't destroy the entire fleet. Instead, it struck just enough to scatter their formation and vanish. Again, Admiral Varlin tried to regain control, shouting for all ships to hold fire and fall back. But before the command reached the edge of the fleet, another message hit the old Terran channel on Vela's screen, this time with coordinates. The signal read, "Beacon verified. Directive update. Rendezvous SV Solace online." Vela blinked in disbelief. Another ship? The name was unfamiliar, but the pattern matched the Spectre. She sent the message to Varlin instantly, along with her interpretation. The Spectre had not come to destroy it, had come to signal the others. The second ship, the Solace, was now active, and the Spectre was going to meet it. The warship wasn't the threat Panic was. By now, the fleet had split into clusters, some retreating, some continuing to fire blindly into space. A group of battlecruisers launched probes in every direction. But all were destroyed moments after crossing an invisible line, perhaps a perimeter, or perhaps a warning. On the far side of Triskar Prime's moon, where sensors had weak range, a sudden energy spike was detected, faint at first, then growing until scanners showed a new object larger than the Spectre, but similar in design, long and angular, with twin holes shaped like the ribs of a beast. The Solace had arrived, rising from deep space, as if it had been hiding in the darkness for centuries. Spectre reappeared beside it, seconds later, both ships now moving together in a slow, synchronized orbit, forming a protective arc around the planet below. Then, for the first time, a message came through, this time not as an old recording, but as a live transmission on an ancient human frequency. Tissa, the voice was calm and female, robotic but clear. Terran network, reinitializing. Vanguard protocol, Phase 2 defense grid reactivation. Stand by. The words echoed across every Terran-compatible channel in the system. Heard by all, translated by no known software, yet understood by every listening ear. Damn. And then the ground below responded. On the surface of Triskar Prime, a planet believed to have never hosted Terran colonies, dozens of old structures long thought to be ruins lit up with faint blue light, forming a web across mountain ranges, canyons, and ancient cities. The planet had once belonged to Earth. The Spectre had not come to invade, had come home. Now, every council, every ship, every commander realized they had misread everything. The ships were not attackers, they were guardians. And they had returned to finish what they had started before being lost to time. Vela stared in awe, tears in her eyes, realizing she was witnessing not the start of a war, but the awakening of a civilization the galaxy had forgotten. Humanity had not been extinct. They had hidden. They had waited. And now, piece by piece, they were coming back. The sight of the Spectre and Solace moving together above Triskar Prime sent a silent shock across every corner of known space. Not because they attacked, but because they didn't. The two ancient Terran ships hovered like guardians, watching over something lost. And as the blue lights spread across the planet's surface, the truth began to rise like smoke from long-buried fire. For centuries, Triskar Prime had been marked as uninhabited. It's a world of failed colonies and forgotten settlements, its terrain rugged and wild, cities broken by storms and time. But now, as the lights formed, symbols visible from orbit, a realization sank into the minds of those watching this planet had once been a piece of Earth's legacy. Admiral Sin Varlin, standing in the observation deck of the flagship Resolute Dawn, could feel the weight of that truth pressing down on him. He no longer saw the Spectre as an enemy, but as something else, something older than war. And yet, behind him, his officers whispered, argued, and worried. Was this an occupation or a warning? Had the Terran machines come to protect what remained, or to prepare for return? None of them understood. Below, on the surface, deep beneath the canyon split by quakes long ago, a hidden vault opened for the first time in over 300 years, its doors creaking and cracking as air hissed out like breath held too long. Inside, machines blinked to life. Soft, white lights illuminated walls covered in human writing, diagrams, and maps. In the center of the room stood a single chair facing a console. And on that chair, frozen in cryostasis, was a human man, His vitals pulsed on a nearby screen, slow and steady, waiting for activation. Vela, who had begged for peace, who had studied every fragment of Terran history, had been granted access to the surface after Admiral Varlin overruled the Council's demands to retreat and regroup. She stood now before the vault with a small team of scientists and soldiers staring in silence at the figure inside. "He's alive," whispered one of the medics. "How?" No one could answer. But Vela stepped forward, her voice shaking. "Because they planned for this. They didn't die, they scattered, and they left guardians behind." Moments later, the cryoseal disengaged with a soft chime, and the glass door opened slowly. The man inside gasped as breath rushed into his lungs, his chest rising, eyes fluttering, body stiff from centuries of frozen sleep. His skin was pale, hair dark, age impossible to tell, but he looked no older than 30 when his eyes finally opened. They met Vela's, and for a long moment he said nothing. Then, in a voice raspy but clear, he asked one word: "Status." Vela hesitated, unsure how to answer, but the man didn't wait. He looked at the console, tapped a few keys, and the room filled with a soft chime. "Vanguard protocol active," a voice announced. "Last surviving Earth Command Unit, verified Commander Lucan Rel." The name meant nothing to the others, but Vela felt a chill. She had seen that name before, in old files, faded reports, from Earth's final war, listed among the last defenders during the fall of the Solar Core. Lucan Rel was not a soldier. He was a strategist, a systems architect, one of the minds behind the Terran Vanguard. He looked around slowly, eyes adjusting, then spoke again, louder now. "How long has it been?" "Over 300 years, Vela replied softly. Nodded, no shock in his face, only deep, focused calm. "How many ships responded?" She answered. "2 so far, the Spectre and Solace." A pause. "Then the signal chain is still broken. We're incomplete." Vela stepped forward. "Commander, the Council didn't know. They thought you were gone. They attacked." Lucan didn't blink. "Of course they did." He stood now, wobbling only slightly, strength returning fast. "Where's Earth?" That question struck the room like thunder. No one spoke. Finally, Vela answered, voice heavy, with sadness. "Gone. Radiation storm took it. Nothing left. It's lost." Lucan turned away, silent for a moment. Then he touched the console again, sending a signal too complex for any modern ship to trace. In orbit, the Spectre blinked once. The Solace drifted closer. And far beyond, in deep space, another signal echoed back. "Vanguard Unit, EOS, acknowledged," a voice said quietly in the vault. 3 of 7 active, awaiting core directive. Vela stared at the display, realization blooming fast. There were 7 ships, 7 warships, hidden across the stars, waiting for their commander, waiting for the pieces to return. Lucan Rel looked at her, and for the first time he smiled, but there was no warmth in it, only determination. "Earth may be gone," he said, "but humanity is not. Kayla, we left threads, colonies, frozen vaults, codes buried in systems no one bothered to map, and now they're waking up. Above, in orbit, chaos grew. The Council had launched more scouts, trying to scan the Solace and Spectre, trying to learn, to gather, or maybe just to keep up. But every probe sent near the Terran ships vanished without a trace. No explosion, no data returned, just erased. Still, the ships did not fire. They only waited. Akana. But now, something new happened. The Solace turned slowly, facing deep space. Akana. Its engines lit not to flee, but to transmit. A light pulse, repeated 3 times, sent into the void. No known race understood it, but the Terrans did, and they were calling the others. Lucan stepped outside for the first time in centuries, staring up at the sky of Triscar Prime, his face still calm. This world, he said, was a seed, a test, to see if the vanguard would endure. We are the echo of Earth, and now they'll hear us. In that moment, Vela realized the truth. The Terran vanguard hadn't come back for revenge. They had come back for connection, to rebuild. But the galaxy wouldn't understand. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Fear had ruled for too long. And fear often fires first. But now, it might be too late to stop what had already begun. Because, far away, in another system, a new light blinked into existence. A fourth ship, rising from the shadow of a dead star. Its engines silent, its hull ancient and marked with the same code, Vanguard. The echo of Earth was growing louder, and the stars were listening. The fourth Vanguard ship, now known as the Arclight, emerged from the dead orbit of a red dwarf star in a system once used as a graveyard for failed colonies, and as it drifted slowly through the red-tinged dust clouds surrounding it, its ancient hull caught the dying sunlight and reflected strange patterns that seemed to move even when still, almost alive. News of its reactivation reached Triscar Prime in less than an hour, and across the command deck of the Resolute Dawn, tension grew like a coiled wire ready to snap. Commander Lucan Rel stood calmly at the center of the debate, his hands behind his back, eyes watching the reports come in, and while admirals argued over possible responses, he remained silent until the room quieted enough to hear his voice, which was low but firm. The Vanguard does not come to ask. Kate comes to complete what was left undone. No one dared challenge him directly, but the Council sent encrypted messages demanding oversight, control, even shutdown codes, none of which worked. The ships were too old, too unique, built with layered defenses that made them immune to modern interference. And now, with 4 of 7 active, the balance was shifting faster than anyone could track. Fela, who had become both witness and translator to Lucan's mission, followed him closely as they prepared to travel to the Arclight, hidden deep inside the red dust belt of the Vero system, where no ship had flown in over 100 years due to unstable magnetic fields and scattered wreckage from forgotten wars. They traveled aboard a modified cruiser fitted with Terran systems to avoid Vanguard defense, and as they slipped through the red haze, we passed the remains of dozens of broken ships, some barely holding shape, others still locked in silent battles with weapons frozen in place. Vela watched the field with wide eyes, whispering that it looked like time had stopped. But Lucan only said, "This was one of our failsafes. A memory left behind to scare off those who didn't belong." When they reached the Arclight, they found it half buried in a drifting cloud of magnetic dust, its hull pulsing with slow blue lights, its engines idle. No response came to their signal at first. Then, after 12 minutes of silence, a faint tone echoed through the ship's systems, followed by one word spoken in an old, cracked voice, "Commander." Lucan smiled slightly. "Unit R, light away." As they docked and entered the ship, it became clear this vessel was different from the others. Inside, the corridors were darker, narrower, and the lights flickered as if trying to remember how to shine. The air smelled faintly of metal and old oil. In the command chamber, the core AI flickered on, forming the shape of an elderly man with half a face missing, its voice rough and slow, as if it had aged during sleep. Called Lucan by rank and number, then gave a report. Defensive status, dormant. Combat systems, degraded. Core directive, incomplete. Lucan nodded and answered with a phrase in ancient Earth code. The AI responded instantly, unlocking the main terminal. From that point, the Arclight began powering up fully, drawing energy from the dust storms outside through coils embedded in the hull. And then something unexpected happened. A signal burst from the Arclight, not sent by Lucan or any known system, but by the ship itself. A low, rumbling tone that echoed across the sector, passing through every ship in orbit near Veros within minutes. Sensors on distant stations lit up with strange readings. Some believed it was a warning, others thought it was a call, and some whispered it was a kind of song, a requiem buried deep in tearing memory. Vela listened closely and said she felt sadness in it, a kind of farewell. Lucan confirmed it quietly. It is a mourning song. This ship remembers what we lost here, for the red dust belt had become a graveyard. It had been the site of Earth's final civilian exodustance of thousands of colonists fleeing from the collapse of the solar core. Guided by Terran, ships that were later hunted and destroyed by enemies who believed Earth's fall should be final. The Arclight had survived, barely, hiding in the dust, broken but watching. And now that it was awake again, it wanted the galaxy to know the price that had been paid. As the song spread, something began to change. Ships that had once ignored the red belt now approached it carefully, drawn by the signal. But not all were friendly. A private military fleet under contract with the Council sent a group of heavy destroyers to investigate. But they opened fire on the dust clouds after detecting unknown energy spikes, and within moments, they were gone erased without warning. Not by the Arclight, but by something else, buried deep in the belt. An old satellite defense ring, long dormant, had reawakened with a vanguard signal and marked the destroyers as hostile. This triggered alarms across the Council's networks, and emergency meetings were called. The vanguard was now not just active, it was spreading its reach. Lucan knew what would happen next. They will try to stop the fifth ship from waking, he told Vela. They fear what they don't understand. And he was right. The next vanguard vessel, the Meridian, was hidden inside a gas giant in the Avenel system, sealed in a crystalline cocoon at the planet's core. The Council had already dispatched a mining fleet there weeks ago, unaware of what slept inside. If they broke the cocoon without the proper code, it could trigger the ship's final defense planetary detonation. Lucan moved quickly, rerouting command through the Spectre to intercept. But as he prepared for launch, another message came through, one that stopped him cold. It was an old human voice, weak, damaged, but unmistakably real. It said, "This is Captain Ward, Terran Command. If any Vanguard hears this, don't let the world break twice." Villa gasped. Captain Elias Ward had been dead for centuries, his voice a legend. A recording played by the Spectre in its first appearance. But this was not the recording. This was a live transmission, distorted by distance, but real. Lucan stared at the console, his face pale. "He's alive, somewhere." The voice repeated once more, then faded. Vela whispered, "What does it mean?" Lucan turned slowly. "It means we missed something. Someone survived beyond the Vanguard. Maybe more." For the first time, doubt flickered in his eyes. If Ward had survived, then what else had been hidden, forgotten, or left behind in the ashes of Earth's fall? Outside, the red dust swirled like smoke, hiding old secrets. But now the echoes were rising again, and the stars were no longer silent. The stars seemed quieter as the last Vanguard ship. The Eidolon awoke from its slumber deep beneath the icy crust of a rogue planet with no sun, its black hole cracking through the frozen surface like a leviathan, surfacing from ancient sleep. And when its systems lit up in eerie blue patterns, all 7 Vanguard ships were finally online, scattered across distant systems, but bound by a single thought: return. Lucan Rel stood aboard the Spectre, watching the data feeds come alive with the full map of the Vanguard fleet. Each vessel now pulsing with long-buried code, their AI minds sharing memories too vast for any living species to fully grasp. And, even as silence held space, Everyone watching knew something was coming, something bigger than war. In the halls of the Galactic Council, panic had turned to fear, and fear into planning. But it was too late to control anything anymore. The Vanguard had passed beyond any leash, and Lucan no longer answered their calls. He had become something else now, not just a man from the past, but a symbol of what humanity had once been and what it could be again. And even Vela, who had once tried to explain peace to machines, found herself struggling to understand the strange calm that came over Lucan as he prepared the final sequence. "They won't stop us," he said simply. "Not this time. We never asked for control. We only asked to survive. Now we return." The phrase echoed in her ears, and she couldn't help but wonder, return to what? Earth was gone, its surface a glowing wasteland of radiation storms and broken crust. And the systems that once supported the human race had long been dissolved or absorbed by newer powers. But Lucan had not spoken of Earth's return. He had spoken of humanity's return. And now the true meaning of that began to unfold. Across distant sectors, long dormant Terran colonies began sending out weak but steady signals, beacons of life hidden for generations. Shielded by AI caretakers, secret gardens among the stars where human DNA had been preserved, grown, taught, and protected by automated systems waiting for the call. Khan had known, or perhaps he had hoped. The Vanguard had not only been built to defend, they had been built to plant. Each of the 7 ships had left behind vaults, seated on remote planets, some failures, some forgotten, but a few had endured. And now, as the Vanguard core reconnected, those vaults lit up, one by one, and from them came not just signals, but voices. Young voices, human voices. Children and adults raised by machines with human hearts, unaware of what the galaxy had become. Vela listened to one of the transmissions, her hands shaking as a girl's voice asked in perfect Earth English, "Is it safe now? Did the war end?" The room fell silent. Lucan nodded. "Now we answer." And with one command, the Vanguard fleet began to move, not to attack, not to invade, but to gather. Each ship activated its long-range transport systems and started retrieving the surviving colonies, bringing them aboard, protecting them, and guiding them to one location, the Orc system, a hidden cluster of planets once dismissed as dead rocks, but in truth prepared centuries ago by early Terran engineers. There, hidden behind black matter veils and gravitational lenses, were Earth's final gifts, 3 terraformed worlds, untouched, unclaimed, and ready for life. The Council watched in disbelief as the impossible became real. Species thought extinct had not only survived, but had prepared its own rebirth. But fear still ruled many hearts, and a fleet was dispatched to intercept the Vanguard before they reached the Arc system. It was massive, over 100 warships, the best from 5 species, with weapons designed to pierce even ancient armor. Lucan knew they were coming. He made no attempt to hide. Instead, he opened all communication channels and spoke clearly across every frequency. "This is Commander Lucan Rel of the Terran Vanguard. We do not seek war. We do not claim territory. We claim only the right to exist, as all life does. If you stand in our way, we will not yield, but we will not fire first." The words echoed across systems, right? And for a long moment, it seemed they might be enough. But fear can be louder than reason. The first shot was fired by a nervous captain's one missile, launched toward the Solace. It never reached its target. The missile vanished mid-space, torn apart by a shield that didn't even shimmer. The Vanguard ships responded instantly, not with destruction, but with light. Each ship emitted a pulse that disabled every enemy. System in range, no ships destroyed, no lives lost, but complete shutdown. The battle was over in less than 4 minutes. The message was clear: do not test the Terran line. After that, no fleet followed. The vanguard moved without resistance, and the Great Migration began. Colony after colony was brought to the Ark system, and what had once been myths turned into stories told by children running across the green fields of new worlds. Humanity had returned, not with fire, but with quiet strength and silent machines. Lucan stood at the edge of the Ark's largest city, still under construction, watching human children laugh as drones built homes around them. Vela stood beside him, finally smiling. "I didn't think peace would look like this," Lucan replied. "Peace only lasts when it's built on memory, and we remember everything." From that day forward, the galaxy no longer spoke of humans as extinct or mythical. They were real. They were back. And they had brought with them a power greater than any weapon, the will to endure. As stars shimmered above and the last vanguard ship settled into orbit around the Ark, the galaxy took a deep breath, unsure what came next. But the silence that followed was not one of fear. It was one of awe. Humanity had not conquered the stars. They had waited, watched, and prepared. And when they returned, they did not ask for the past. They built a future. It's one that even the stars would remember.